So let's dive a little deeper into each of these topics.
Alright, so let's talk about income verification. And I'm going to use my criteria, but again, you're going to set whatever your criteria needs to be. You can say you want somebody to make $300,000 a year to rent your $1,000 a month property. Unlikely you're going to find tenants, but you can do that. So for me, and a pretty common target is 3 times your rent. So what that means is if your rent is $1,000 a month, they need to make 3 times that amount, so $3,000 a month, in order to qualify for your income. So that's how you come up with the calculation as to what it is they need to make. So let's use the last property they rented. They rented for $1,350. So $1,350 times 3 is $4,150. That's a lot. It's $4,050 a month. So that's what I need to see them prove to me that they make. So how do you get that to be proven to you? So you'll ask for typical things that prove your income. You're going to ask for paychecks, and you're going to ask for W-2s or their tax returns. Either of those items will give you a flavor for what it is that they make. If your W-2 shows a certain amount, which it will for the year, your wages, then you can take that, divide that by 12, and that'll tell you their gross income for the per month and for the previous calendar year. So you can use that. Tax return, same thing. It shows you the income that they made for the year. Take that number, divide it by 12. That will give you their monthly income. Or if you're getting pay stubs, now here's the tricky part. Depending on what kind of tenants you get, some people have a salary job where they have a steady paycheck where it's relatively easy to calculate. Some people work hourly, and so you now have to. If I'm looking at pay stubs, I might not want to look at 1 or 2 pay stubs because that might be misleading. If somebody just so happened to work, 60 hours on this particular week, but on a regular basis they might only work 30 or 40, well then that 60-hour-a-week paycheck that they show me, which might be inflated, that one paycheck might be inflated and kind of give me a wrong view of what it is they actually make. So it's for people like that are hourly, I usually ask for more pay stubs. I might ask for 3 or 4. And for those folks, I rely more heavily on a W-2 or a tax return because that's going to be more representative of what they make for a whole year. And then I can take that value and I can divide it by 12. But that's your income verification, and it's relatively straightforward. The hard part you're going to find is a lot of people, and this is where I talk about it a lot. I just talk about the landlord shield that you need to put up. People are going to come to you with a bunch of excuses, and they're going to come to you with a whole lot of stories. So what you got to learn to do is kill the noise and just ask for the bare minimum. If you have, Xavier, this is what I mean by that. On this last property, I think I showed you guys, I had like over 180 requests to come see it. So out of that 180, this particular property is a low to middle tier rental. So I'm not everybody. What that means is there's a lot more people vying to go at that property. If you've got a higher value property, you usually get less people that are interested to go see it, because in the higher value you go, you just typically tend to get more people looking to buy the home. So it's just one of those things. But when you're looking at a lower value rental or a lower rental income type of property, what you find is the quality of tenants usually is a little bit lower because they need less to get into that house. Does that make sense? They're making less. So they usually don't have the high paying salary job. They usually have a lower paying, or they're hourly. And with that, I usually get a lot of stories as to how they intend to make up the rent. So, I mean, in this particular case, for example, this property, like I said, is about $4,000, which your minimum required monthly wages needs to prove to me that you make. So I had someone come in with a paycheck of a weekly paycheck of $700 for that particular month. Okay, if I multiply that by 4, roughly to get to the month, it's $2,800. It's not 4,000. She doesn't make 4,000. So her response was, no, but I make well over that. And she came in with that assumption because I'm very vocal about what the requirements are before I get to the point where you're standing in front of me in the property. But she said she does make that. However, part of it comes from her child support that is not documented. Part of it comes from her private business. This particular lady did hair, and she said, I get this much income a month. I make over like $1,000 a month doing hair. I said, that's great. Did you file that in your tax returns? Or file that in your taxes where I can look at your returns and verify that income? She says, well, I don't claim all of it, or I don't show it all because I don't want to pay taxes on it. Fine, no problem. However, then I can't believe you or take you at your word that you make that money. So it's double-edged sword for her. Like, you're not paying taxes, but now you're qualifying for lesser properties because you can't prove your income. And in this business, I'm not in the business of taking your word for it. I don't care how great of a person you are. Even the greatest of people can have financial troubles and woes, and I don't need your financial troubles to become my financial troubles. I like that. Write that down. So, for me, the biggest thing you can do is stick to your criteria. And the other thing you're going to find is people are going to have like 4 or 5 sources of income. So they'll have maybe, they might have, part coming from their job, parts coming from child support or SSI or some kind of government guaranteed funds. Part is coming from this person or that person. And when this is the case, it's just a lot harder for you as the landlord and the person reviewing this information to prove exactly what their income is. And my general rule, is if I have to try too hard to figure out what you make, or rather, not just what you make, but to figure out that you make enough to get to my criteria, then you're not my tenant. And I can't tell you how many times that happens, where folks have just a bunch of different documents and they're trying to prove this, trying to prove that. I don't want to have to prove to myself that you make what you say you make. It needs to be clear to me. If it's not, then you're just not my tenant. And I would recommend you follow that same rule of logic. I am, over a decade in the game of renting, so I've gone through the woes and the problems of, trusting people and taking them at their word, and you make slightly less than my 3 times the monthly rent or whatever, and it's every single time. And I say this, and I hope someone out there who's kind of on the fence about something listens and takes it seriously. Every time I have bent on my criteria, I have been burned. Call it coincidence, but I don't think so. I think that was my inability to stick to my guns created a situation that gave someone the power to take advantage of. And you're the landlord. You're going to pay. Ultimately. Any month they're in there that they're not paying, you're going to pay. So that's your financial verification, your income verification. Relatively straightforward, easy to do. Those are the documents that you'll want to look at. And that. So the other thing was credit check. That's another one that's pretty straightforward. I told you guys my credit target was 600. I considered raising it to 650, but honestly, I think 600 is such a. It's one of those separator type of credit scores where I think when folks hit a 600 or get above, they start. That's a group of folks that start to really care about their credit. And I feel like when you're down below, it's not so much. I don't want to. Hopefully, I'm not offending you. If I am, take a deep hard look in the mirror. But anyone below a 600, I feel like whether you outwardly just don't give a crap about your credit, or you just don't make paying bills important enough where it now negatively impacts your credit. Because in order to be below a 600, you're likely a person with extreme debt that you haven't been paying, or you've defaulted on certain things. Obviously, bankruptcy is one of those huge. You're just pack it up for like 7 years. You can stay where you are. It can be a hard time getting someone to give you a rent or to allow you to rent. At least anybody with a legitimate process. But any of those situations where you're not paying, you have judgments against you, and all these are deal breakers for me. If I see somebody with a judgment, which means you owed someone money and then it hit your credit because they filed the claim suing you to get that money back. Any judgments like that is a no for me. If you had something like over 10 years ago or something that I'm seeing, and you were squeaky clean until then and you were still over my criteria, all right, we can consider you if everything else holds. But like a bankruptcy, if you had a bankruptcy a decade ago, but now you are at 700 credit and everything looks good, I would rent to you. You've clearly learned, turned things around, you're fine. So if you're taking stuff important now, I assume you'll take my rent important as well. Take my rent seriously as well. So that's real straightforward. Those are the things to look for. Judgments, bankruptcies, evictions will hit your background screening. All those things is what you'll want to look at when you're vetting somebody's credit report. You'll find a lot of inquiries on there. Some people care about that. I don't really care how many inquiries you have. I don't really care how many credit cards you have. As long as you're paying everything, I don't really care at all. But it's when you stop paying those, or if you're consistently late. So late payments is not a deal breaker for me, but if there are too many of them where it feels like you have a pattern of behavior of just not paying bills on time, well, that to me is a deal breaker. So those are things you look for in the credit report. So I guess the other thing would be the background check. Background check is another thing that's pretty straightforward. You are going to get scrubbed against every criminal list and criminal database that exists. So we're talking about your state, local police. We're talking about FBI lists. We're talking about terrorist lists. We're talking about sex offender lists. We're talking about child abuser lists. We're talking about I think I said terrorists. We're talking about all of these watch lists that are out there. If you are on any of those, for me, that's going to be 9 times out of 10 a deal breaker. The only ones that would not be, and I alluded to this in the beginning, if you've got a small, like misdemeanor type of charge, any kind of minor crimes that are out there that are like puppy shit, that doesn't really bother me from the perspective of being your landlord. That wouldn't stop me from renting to you. But if you are convicted of many violent crimes, even if you've got major arrests for a bunch of violent crimes, or anything against children, or if anything as sex offender, child abuser, that's a firm no. And I don't want to talk about it. We don't need to discuss it. That's a no. As far as from the criminal perspective, if you have a felony charge, also a no. The rental history, another one that's relatively straightforward. For reaching out to your old landlord, we're going to ask for information about you. I'll put up a form here. So this form, so basically you're asking for, all the things about the tenant, how they treat your property, did they pay their rent on time, how did they pay their rent, did they have pets, did they take care of things, were they easy to get along with, did they disturb neighbors, all of these kinds of things. Just who were they as a tenant, and do I want to take that on, or am I going to regret that decision? So that's pretty much it. I'll walk you through some of the systems, show you what that is, but so that's pretty much it. Appreciate your time, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Send this to a friend, get a friend to subscribe. I very much appreciate that. And if you want to learn more about like landlording in general, this is the book right here, and I wrote this with this exact intent and this exact type of conversation in mind. So it'll help you as a landlord, whether you're first time or long time, just think about some of those target bullet points that you should be thinking about to be an effective landlord, to make sure that, and if you do that, I think you can certainly ensure that you've got a nice, sustainable, long-term renter that's going to pay your rent on time, and you're not going to have very many issues. So good luck, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.